What is up? A rare Saturday stream for me, but I had to get some things off my chest, make sure while practice is still fresh in my mind, I'm running off of almost no sleep, that I'm able to get this information out to you and then let you do with it what you will. I want to get you prepared for the preseason as well. There's some players that definitely flashed. There's some players that you should watch and possibly be concerned about. And then I'll just give a full breakdown of the quarterback competition, how I see it, how I saw it, and where we're headed. So, with that being said, give me a few seconds of rest here, play this intro, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And as you can see, I'm back at home. When I say I'm running on almost no sleep, I mean literally maybe 3 hours. I got in at 6:30 this morning, slept for a couple hours, had to take my kids to go play at their friend's house, grabbed a quick coffee, and was like, shoot, you know what? Before practice today, I got to stream. I got to get my thoughts out while they're fresh in my mind. So for those of you that are joining, appreciate you. What's up, brother Bob? How you doing? Let me know. Are you you should be an admin on the channel now. So let me know, make sure it's working. What's up, Big Heck? Jason? Old computer, okay. What's up, old computer? I prefer my new one, but take the old one too. What's up, JC? This guy smiles. All right, let's get into it. So before we get to quarterback, there's some players to me that really flashed over the 5 days that I was there. Now, keep in mind, over the 5 days, there was 1 day of non-padded practice, 4 days of padded practice. 3 of those 4 days, they ran one-on-ones. And then 1 day was a really, really light practice. That was on Thursday. They ran 0 one-on-ones. But there was 3 players that I think you should really keep an eye out for as we head into the preseason. These are guys that, you may not expect a lot from, or you think might have a bright future, but they're going to play a lot during the preseason. And I'm excited to see what happens with their future and what happens with their roster spot this year, or potential roster spot. Okay, first one. If you've watched anything from me this week, I wasn't pushing a quarterback agenda, but I was pushing a Jalen Graham agenda. Jalen Graham, linebacker out of Purdue, 7th round pick this year, converted safety. Let's not forget that he played safety for a couple years in college as well, was a hell of a safety in high school, and then he converted over to linebacker for his final 2 years at Purdue. And this is what the 49ers do. They take players that were ex-safeties, turned into linebackers, and they make them stars. So Jalen Graham might be that next guy in line. We should have just known. We should have known. Oh, he was a safety, now he's a linebacker? Yeah, he'll be a stud in the NFL with the 49ers. He is really fun to watch. So they go through their one-on-one periods where linebackers line up with running backs or tight ends, fullbacks, what have you. And the one-on-one periods are designed for the receiver to win on a regular basis. Out of the 40 plus total routes that I've charted over the last couple days, wide receiver won 99% of them. There was like 4 reps that were won by the defender. Graham was 2 of those reps and really was almost 3. So let me paint the picture for you. CMC is unguardable, absolutely unguardable. And especially when you give him a chance in a one-on-one situation to do a double move, you can't guard CMC unless you're Jalen Graham. Jalen Graham can guard CMC. He actually played the perfect coverage. I don't know how CMC caught the ball. It was an incredible catch, but Jalen Graham was right there in his hip the whole time. The only player to be within 2-3 yards of him coming out of his routes. Then he had a rep against Juice where he completely shut him down, stayed on his inside hip. Juice tried to take an outside release, go upfield. No go. Jalen Graham stopped him. Then the next day, he's going up against TDP, absolutely wipes him out as well. So in coverage, you can see that safety skill set come through in the one-on-one drills. And then when you get to 11 on 11s, he's extremely explosive, very fast. He's always near the ball. Yesterday, he had a hell of a play. I forget who it was. I think it was a toss play, and he just absolutely wrecked it in the backfield. He is somebody to look out for. Very explosive athlete. Again, ex-safety. I think he might be a guy for the 49ers here. We'll see if they can sneak him on the practice squad or if they make him active. But if they try to sneak him on the practice squad, I have a feeling that the preseason is not going to allow them to do that. I think he's going to flash in the preseason, much like Womack did last year. So that's player number one. Player number two to look out for as we get into the preseason, Taco Charlton. Remember, Taco Charlton was a first-round pick, Dallas Cowboys. Now, he was only there for a couple years, and he's bounced around the league since. He's played for Dallas, Miami, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, most recently for Chicago. His best season came in Miami, where he had a 5-sack season. He's 28 years old. I believe he turns 29 in November. But tell me this isn't the perfect reclamation project for Chris Kosirak. I mean, this is the guy. It's like 6'6", 270 pounds, bounced around the league, nothing special, but was a first-round pick. The talent's there. Chris Kosirak is definitely the right person for the job. And Taco has been incredible. His first practice was on a Tuesday. We called it Taco Tuesday because he was obliterating everybody in one-on-ones. And then he got himself a couple sacks throughout the last couple of days and 11 on 11s as well. I think this might be a really, really sneaky pickup by the 49ers. And it's funny because when you heard his name and he got picked up, it was like, whatever, Taco Charlton. He's been around the league, approaching 30 years old. Probably nothing special. Well, I would say that Taco might be somebody to watch. He might be that added depth piece that the 49ers need. And I don't know if you heard, and this was a big loss for the 49ers in the offseason, Charles Omenihu, but he got suspended. So he's going to be out for 6 games for Kansas City. 49ers might have dodged a bullet there. Taco Charlton might be that guy that can come in and be the sneaky player to look out for. And then the last one, which talked a little bit about, but not a ton. Leroy Watson. Tackle out of UTSA. He played tight end in college. Remember, he played with Spencer Burford in college, but he was a tight end. He was undrafted, picked up by the Falcons, didn't do anything for them. And now he's in year 2. He's 25 years old, a little bit older. He actually went to community college for a couple years as a tight end before he went to UTSA. He was a mean blocker at UTSA as a tight end, and now he's a converted tackle. He was forced to start or play with the ones a couple days ago. He was really good. Really, really good. In fact, I think that he might be the backup swing tackle or have a shot at it. I really do. Jalen Moore went down with an injury. And for whatever reason, the San Francisco 49ers had Jalen Moore penciled in as a guard when they drafted him. If you remember that first press conference, Jalen Moore is a future guard for this team. But they haven't played him at guard. They've played him at tackle. I don't think that's the right position for him. I don't think he's a very good tackle. He gets injured in practice. Unfortunate for him. Think he's going to be okay, but he's going to be out for a bit. And Watson filled in really well. Not only really well, but did better than Moore. For somebody that was an ex-tight end, you know that the footwork is there. You know the athleticism is there. He's put on a ton of weight. He looks the part. He's somebody to look out for during the preseason. And if he can pan out and be the guy that I think he possibly could be and be that swing tackle for the 49ers, all of a sudden the depth looks really good because Poe's looked pretty good in practice. Feliciano, we know, is a guy. So that takes care of the interior. Obviously, we're looking for depth at the tackle position. That's a concern. Maybe Watson's the answer there. So I think Watson is a guy to look out for as we get into the preseason as well. All right. Now, for the three guys that are people to look out for and be excited about as we get to the preseason, here's two guys to pay attention to that are struggling for very different reasons. One of them is a player that I was super excited about going into this offseason period. I thought he might push Javon Kinlaw for a roster spot, and that's Kalia Davis. Kalia Davis was out there sparingly. When he was out there, hardly even noticeable. And then he got a hamstring injury. And now he's got this much needed development that he's missing out on, and it's unfortunate. Now, I think that I don't know if he'll make the roster per se. I guess we'll see how the rest of this preseason goes and practice and what have you. Maybe they can sneak him back onto the practice squad. But Kalia Davis, it was very disappointing. I really wanted to see him. I think there's a ton of potential there. I think he's got a really good frame to play the position. And I think he's got a ton of talent as well. But he's done nothing due to injury. And the day or so he was there, he didn't flash. So that was a little disappointing. And then the other one is Spencer Burford. Talked about Leroy Watson out of UTSA doing really well. Might be a guy, might be a swing tackle. Spencer Burford, his teammate in college, who has, I think, a very bright future. I think he played very well, especially for a rookie last year. He really struggled in these practices. I mean, he was getting whipped quite a bit. So that's a little bit concerning, but I do want to remind you, and I'm not going to say, hey, you hit the panic button on Spencer Burford. Last year, we heard similar things out of Aaron Banks. Aaron Banks was having trouble blocking people. He was having trouble moving his feet. He was getting tied up a lot. A lot of people thought it was a mistake that the 49ers were going to start him last year. And boy, were they wrong. So I don't want to hit the panic button on Burford, but I do want to point it out because it was something that I saw. And I really think it's something that we should pay attention to if he gets any burn in the preseason, just how that goes and possibly how his season goes. Now, remember, Feliciano is a veteran. He knows how to play the position. He's been in this league. He's been pretty decent in this league. Started just last year for the Giants. He can push Burford if Burford is not playing well. So just something to look out for. All right. Before we get to the quarterbacks and that full breakdown there, I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything crazy in the chat. What's up, Joseph? Your kids miss you, bro. They're at a friend's house playing. They don't miss me that much, apparently. I did get to see him this morning. That was nice. Give him big hugs and kisses. But yeah, they are already gone and at a friend's house. Summer's almost over for them. They start school in just a few days. So, all right, let's get into the quarterbacks. And obviously, this was the focus all week. We know that Brock Purdy is going to be the starter. And I want to be clear. I don't think anything happened this week to say, let's hit the panic button on that. Let's unseat him as the starter. Somebody else should be starting over him. We knew that task would be almost impossible. Like, he would have to be really awful and somebody would have to be really, really, really good in order for that to even be a possibility. And that just hasn't been the case. He has not been awful. And nobody's been really, really, really good. People have flashed. People have had good days. Of the 5 days I was there, I had Sam Darnold being the best quarterback on 2 of those days. One of those days was a non-padded practice. I had Brock Purdy being the best quarterback one of those days during a padded practice. And I had Trey Lance being the best quarterback on 2 of those days, much like Sam Darnold. And those were in padded practices. So you can see that nobody's really separating. And other than Sam Darnold having one awful day, nobody's played horrible either. Everybody's been pretty good. In fact, when I look at the stats and I posted them on Twitter, I'll read them out to you. All of the quarterbacks have been very efficient. In the 4 padded practices, here's the completion percentage. Brock Purdy, 73%. Sam Darnold, 72%. Trey Lance, 71%. So they've all been efficient. It's not like any of them are playing horrible. But remember, I gave daily grades. And so I took those daily grades, was able to give an overall final grade and a score for everybody. And here's how I did it. Much like in school, there's a score associated with the letter grade that you get. So, for example, if I gave a B on a day, I gave that a score of 85. If I gave a B minus, I gave that a score of 80. And if I gave a B plus, I gave that a score of 89. That's essentially how it's done in school. And that's what I did here. I added all the points up together, divided it by 4, and came up with an average score and thus an average grade. So let's start with Brock Purdy, the starting quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. Here's how I saw his time in the 4 padded practices. 73% completion, 3 touchdowns, 2 turnovers, 1 dropped pick, sacked 10 times. I gave him an overall grade of B minus and a score of 83.5. The way I came up with that was the scoring on the individual days, or the grades on the individual days. First day was a C. Second day, he was the best quarterback out there at a B plus. And then he rounded things out with 2 Bs. Here's the good with Brock Purdy. He pushed the ball down the field a lot, which was really good to see. He was testing things out. He wasn't afraid to pull the trigger. The confidence is still there. I think the swagger is still there. This is one thing that I've talked about with Brock Purdy quite a bit. And as they entered the playoffs last year, people were worried. Well, he's a rookie. When does the ground fall out? What if he gets rattled? What does that look like? And I kept telling people it's not going to happen. Mentally, Brock Purdy, I believe, is bulletproof. I think that was his biggest attribute coming out of college. And I think it's a very important one to have. That still exists for Brock Purdy. He has a bulletproof mindset. And especially coming off of an injury where I think a lot of quarterbacks, and I've been hearing this as well. Well, what happens when he knows he can get tackled? Is he gun shy? I don't think he will be. I think Brock Purdy is sound in the mind, and he's going to play football the way he's always played football. So that still exists. That's a plus. He's willing to take the shots down the field, much like you saw last year, willing to take some shots downfield. However, and I don't think this is because he's coming off of arm surgery. I just think this is who he is. This is who I've seen in college. This is who I saw last year. This is who I saw in practice. It's great that you're willing to take those shots, but when he's taking shots outside the numbers, that ball is dying on him. There were 4 passes where he took shots, 3 of them down the left sideline, 1 of them down the right sideline, that were severely underthrown. One of them, they were able to get a pass interference on. It was so underthrown that the receiver the defensive back couldn't get out of the way of the receiver, and it ended up being a pass interference. Should have been a touchdown. The other one, there was another one that George Kittle caught yesterday that was severely underthrown. And then he had 2 others that were severely underthrown. Both ended up being PBUs. One should have been picked by Hufanga. That is concerning because, at some point, teams start to close in on you and figure out that you can't make those throws with consistency, they're not worried about it. You play a team like Seattle, who's already played Brock Purdy twice, and they have the corners that can really go man up and press receivers, and they're not afraid of being beat one-on-one on the outside edge. That could be a problem. And the Seattle Seahawks are in the 49ers division. So I'm just thinking long term, if Brock Purdy is the quarterback, they're going to have a real chance at eventually winning this division as this team improves. And if they have Brock Purdy's number, then that can be a problem. So just some things to think about as we go forward. But Brock Purdy played like Brock Purdy. And I'll also say this, he started out rough in a couple of practices and really bounced back. And that goes and talks about the mental fortitude that he has. Like I said, that's his biggest strength. He's also still very accurate. I think he's decisive with the ball. Not afraid to take chances, but the arm strength's just not there. It isn't. And you see it show up on a regular basis. Now, that being said, the 49ers have proven they can win a lot of games with Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy has proven he can play in this league. And as long as the anticipation is there, he can get the job done with this roster as currently constructed. He can certainly get the job done. But if this is truly who he is forever going forward, I just don't think that's somebody that you can pay big money to. I would caution the 49ers on that. I think he's earned a starting job this year. I think it'll look good this year. I think the 49ers will win a lot of games this year. I think the 49ers will have a chance to go to and possibly win a Super Bowl this year. But long term, I still would caution paying a Brock Purdy if this truly is who he is. Okay, let's get to Sam Darnold. Like I said, he was the best quarterback in 2 of the practices. One of them was non-padded. And in the 4 padded practices, he came away with the worst day by far. He had an F day. He had a day where he went 1 of 5. In the red zone period, he was 0 of 3 with 2 dropped interceptions. Just awful. However, he's been pretty decent the rest of the days. He's completed 72% of his passes in the 4 padded practices. He's had 2 dropped interceptions. He's been sacked 4 times. I gave him an overall grade of B-. So he had the same grade as Brock Purdy. However, his score was less. Brock Purdy had an average score of 83.5. Darnold had an average score of 81. And here's how I graded him overall in the individual days. I gave him a B, an F, a B+, and a B. Here's what's interesting about Sam Darnold. And I was talking with Vish about this, and I think this might lay some context. When you have quarterbacks who have been turnover prone in their career, Danny Dimes is a really good example of this. Generally, if they are going to fix that situation and not be a turnover prone quarterback, they have a year where they don't take a lot of chances. They don't push the ball down the field. They're kind of a dink and dunk quarterback. And they do that to get in rhythm. And then maybe the next year they can go back to playing how they always did without turning the ball over. But they need that year to not take a lot of chances, not throw a lot of interceptions, not push the ball down the field. That's exactly what you're seeing from Sam Darnold in practice. He had a day yesterday where he went 11 of 12, and I gave him a B because he completed, and these are air yards, 10 yards, 8 yards, 7 yards. Everything else was behind the line of scrimmage, at the line of scrimmage, 2 yards past the line of scrimmage. That's just not impressive. That's not going to get it done. He could have gone 30 of 30. And if all of his passes were like that, I still would have given him a B. To me, I value quarterbacks who not only can push the ball down the field, but while they're pushing the ball down the field, they can protect the football. I value those things. Sam Darnold certainly looks the part, and being the most veteran quarterback of the 3 young ones, I expected that he could be pretty good in practice, but we've seen Sam Darnold play actual football, and we know what that looks like. I think in this offense, he certainly can be the best he's ever been. But I do think that in order to do so, he may not push the ball down the field the way that you would hope. I mean, he rarely pushed the ball down the field throughout the whole practice, and he has the arm to do so. He just didn't do it. It's like he's gun shy. He's scared to do it. And so because of that, that's why he was given the grades that he was given. So the way that I see it, knowing the track history of Sam Darnold, what he's been before he came to San Francisco, what I saw in practice, I think it's very clear that he should be the third quarterback. Very, very clear. Unless they want to keep Allen and move on from Trey, they're not. If they move on from Trey Lance, it would be because of two reasons. One, they can get more for him than they could get for the other two quarterbacks. Or two, he requests a trade. If they get rid of Trey Lance, it's not because he's not showing improvement and he's not better than Sam Darnold. That will not be the reason that they get rid of Trey Lance. It would be because he requests a trade and they oblige him, or they're comfortable with Sam as a backup. They're comfortable with Allen as a third, and Trey Lance garners more in a trade than Sam Darnold. Those would be the reasons. We'll see how it plays out. But Sam Darnold, to me, was clearly not on the level of Purdy or Lance. And knowing who he has been in this league, I've seen enough to know that Darnold should not be playing over either one of those guys. All right, let's get to Trey Lance. Trey Lance completed 71% of his passes. He had 1 turnover, 3 sacks. I gave him a B+ grade over the course of the 4 days of padded practices and a score of 87.25. The way I came up with that score is Sam Darnold had the worst day of practices in padded practice. Trey Lance, the very first day of padded practice, had the best day out of all of them. He got an A that day. He then followed that up with a B, a B-, and yesterday rounded it out with a B+. Trey Lance, one thing that people talk about is they really hone in on the short passes. You see a play of him in practice where he airmails a ball that he definitely should have completed. And people have this assumption that he's just doing this with every short pass and he can't do the easy stuff. When in reality, even though he may not have been the best quarterback mechanically, if you look at his short pass percentage, anything under 10 yards, he's actually been good in the NFL. He's been good enough. 60+% from under 10 yards. Where Brock Purdy separated from Trey Lance is in that intermediate. And that's where the 49ers like to live. That's where Jimmy Garoppolo liked to live with Kyle Shanahan, intermediate over the middle. That's where Brock Purdy's been living. And that's where Trey Lance needed to close the gap. Trey Lance lived in that area in practice. Anywhere from 10 to 20. Now he did have multiple passes over 20 yards as well, but 10 to 20 is where he really was doing work in practice. And that was the area that he actually needed to close the gap. Don't listen to he can't do the easy stuff. Stats say otherwise. Don't take one pass and think that that's everything, because most of the time he's completing those passes. It's the intermediate stuff. And he was damn near perfect in the intermediate range. I mean, every day, 3-4 passes in that range, over the middle, outs, anything that you could think of, he was hitting, bang eights. So that was an improvement for him. Mechanically, I mean, say what you want about who he was mechanically, he might be the most mechanically sound quarterback of the 3 right now. And that sounds crazy to say, but if you actually watch things, it's funny because last year people really scrutinized how when he would drop back to pass, the ball would dip and then he would come around. Go watch Brock Purdy throw the football. That ball comes down just like Trey's did and comes around. Now, his legs are a lot better than Trey Lance was last year. His base is a lot better. But as far as dipping the ball, you're not going to hear anybody talk bad about Brock Purdy and his mechanics. One, because it really honestly is not that big of a deal at all, if it's even a deal. And two, because he's performing. But when Trey Lance wasn't living up to expectation in a lot of people's minds, now all of a sudden every little thing's a big deal. Well, if you look at that release now, I mean, it's here, gone. It's short, it's tight, it's quick. He looks the part the best as far as mechanics go, which is interesting. Like I said, very interesting. He definitely does need to tighten up with some of those short passes. I don't care if you look at the numbers and they are where they need to be, he just still can't have those dump off misses, those bad dump off misses. He's got to tighten those up. But he, out of all of them, had the least amount of passes thrown in harm's way in practice. He only won in 5 days threw one pass in harm's way. It happened to be intercepted. That was it. He did not put the ball in harm's way. Brock Purdy, again, I count sacks. So when a sack happens, I don't count the throw afterwards. Most other, like the reporters, they count it and they talk about it. I don't really. But if we're going to count the sacks and what happens after that, I said that he had one dropped pick. He had another 4 that were dropped picks as well, or picked off after sacks. That's still like a decision-making thing, right? Like when they get sacked, it's not like they have a player right in front of them and they got to make a crazy throw. No, what happens is the player comes up and stops, clear sack, then the play continues and the quarterback gets to make a free throw with nobody around him. And he, off of those throws, he has 3 near picks and an actual pick. Again, it's not a stat. I'm not going to count it in my chart, but they exist. Trey Lance had none of those. One pass in harm's way the whole time. So he protected the football. I don't think he took as many shots downfield as Brock, which is kind of crazy to say. But unlike Brock, who was underthrowing the ball on a regular basis, he was completing them on a regular basis. So not only is he taking more chances than Darnold, pushing the ball down the field, he's completing them at a higher clip than anybody on the roster, and he's not putting the ball in harm's way. I mean, that will earn you the best grade of the week. Now, that doesn't mean that when he gets into games, he's the best quarterback right now. I do actually firmly believe that week 1, Brock Purdy is the best quarterback. Like I said, I think he should start. And I think right now in this moment, he's probably a little bit better, especially for this team, than Trey Lance. But my argument's always been, it's not about week 1. It's about week 18. And I believe from week 1 to week 18, Trey Lance would make the most growth. We've already seen that base is built. He looks way better than he's ever looked from a mechanical standpoint, from a poise standpoint, a confidence standpoint. Everybody that I talked to that was at practices last year was like, this is not even the same guy. He is much improved. So when you put all those things together, this is somebody that hasn't even really played in 4 years, and he's still making these improvements. Imagine if he actually played, the improvement that would be made from week 1 to week 18. I have no doubt in my mind that week 18, if he played all season, Brock plays all season, Sam plays all season, that by week 18, Trey Lance would be the best quarterback far and away out of all of them. Unfortunately, we're never going to know the answer to that because San Francisco 49ers can't play all 3 quarterbacks for 18 weeks. And as long as Brock Purdy's healthy and playing good, which I'm not going to predict injury on anybody, I wouldn't wish injury on anybody, I think Brock Purdy can keep that job. I expect him to keep that job all season. So we'll see what the future holds for Trey Lance if that scenario holds true. But I've seen nothing in these practices that would make me think that Trey Lance doesn't have a bright future still. And it's funny because I don't know if you've been paying attention, but the national media did a full 180 on him over the course of this week. I found that really interesting, including Colin Cowherd. Colin Cowherd even came out and said, yeah, he still might be a franchise quarterback. I just don't know if it's with San Francisco. I can't write him off. Now, Zach Wilson, I'm writing off, but I can't do that with Trey Lance. What? This is a guy who has hated on Trey Lance forever. It was clear it was personal with the thing that happened, whatever happened with Trey Lance and his daughter. And now even he's coming out and being like, well, yeah, I mean, shoot, you never know. I mean, he could still be a guy in this league. That was kind of surprising to me. So anyways, that is the recap that I have this week. I gave you 3 players that you needed to watch for in a good way that flashed to me in practice that were not quarterbacks that you really need to pay attention to when it comes to the preseason. I gave you 2 guys that you should potentially be concerned about that are non-quarterbacks, and we'll see how their offseason continues to progress. And then I gave you a full breakdown of the quarterbacks. All right, let's get into some of these comments here. Ryan says, I'll tell you who shined, Jesse. It was you. It was you, Jesse. Tell me about what you saw from Danny Gray. All right, I can do that. Thank you, Ryan. And by the way, I got to meet Ryan in person. That was really cool. He's exactly who I thought he was. And it really felt like I've known Ryan for a lifetime. Like, we are very, very similar as people. And if I lived near him, I could see him being in my inner circle and one of my best friends for sure. So shout out to you, Ryan. Enjoyed meeting you. Danny Gray, yeah. Another player that I thought was potentially on the bubble. Now, I didn't put him in my players to watch necessarily, but you definitely can during the preseason. I think he's actually a pretty damn good route runner. He was getting open in intermediate level routes quite a bit. In fact, he was a recipient of a lot of those passes from Trey Lance. He looks pretty good. He looks like he's progressing. And based off of what I saw, I would say that I definitely want to see the 49ers continue to develop him and keep him on this roster. No doubt about it. He went from a guy that I thought potentially could be cut or be on the bubble to you have to keep Danny Gray now. You're starting to see that development happen. I think Danny Gray, and I heard a lot that he catches the ball kind of like this with his chest and his body, both arms type of thing. I didn't see that. He caught the ball away from his body all week. I thought he did a hell of a job. He went up and got a couple of passes, was not afraid to go over the middle, was separating on multiple different routes. He's not just a one-trick pony and can run the 9 route. He was really doing everything. I think he ran the dig routes clean. I think he ran the bang 8s clean. I think he did a really good job this week. And I think Danny Gray certainly will not only make this team, but has a future with the 49ers. And I'm excited to see what he does as well. Brother Bob says, Nails, thanks for being objective. Did you meet Kevin's dad? I did. I definitely met Kevin's dad. I met him. I didn't see Jack. I don't know if he was on a different side of the field. I would have loved to have shaken his hand, done a million shows with Jack. It would have been nice to shake his hand, but I was able to meet Larry. Obviously, I hung out all week with Grant. Jordan Elliott, I was able to meet in person. Brad Graham, Steph Sanchez, Rohan, Ted. Let's see who else. Raj from our SF 49ers. So I was able to meet a lot of content creators. It was really cool. A lot of the media, really cool. Guy Haberman, best hair. Well, him and Steph Sanchez, they have the best hair, both of them. Their hair is incredible. Guy's really short, though. Holy crap. He is really, I did not expect that. He's a short fella for sure. But damn, he's got great hair. So, I mean, automatically, that's like being 6'4", really, with hair like that. Yeah. So, anyways, Silver, I got to see Mike Silver, even though we went at it on Twitter. I didn't introduce myself, but him, Lombardi, they were all there. So it was good. It was a fun week overall. Let's see a couple of these other chats. Let's make sure I didn't miss anything big here. Yeah, Big Des says intermediate and deeper passes will open up this offense. Absolutely. And I think this is where people, this is where the arguments happen a lot with Brock Purdy. A lot of people call him Jimmy 2.0. And I understand what they're saying from a standpoint of, hey, most of the passes he's going to complete, if you look at the air yards, they're going to be similar. Where he likes to operate, okay. The difference is that Brock Purdy athletically is on a whole different level. He hasn't had a major leg surgery or an ACL like Jimmy. Mentally, I think he's completely different as well. We talk about mental fortitude, and Jimmy seemed to fold when the moments got biggest. Jimmy also, coming back from an ACL, really never had that same confidence as a player. He lost all mobility. ACL shouldn't be a death sentence anymore, but for him, it's almost like it has been. It's completely hampered his mobility. He's not at all the same confident player he was in 2017. And Brock Purdy is very confident coming off of a major injury himself, not afraid to rip it and do whatever he did before. I think those are the two separators. So as players, as people, I think they're very different. As far as what they bring to the table, though, in the pocket and how they like to operate and where those passes are going to be completed, I think there's a lot of similarities. So I kind of understand the Jimmy G 2.0, but then the other side of that argument is the mental side is really, really big. And Brock Purdy has an incredible mental fortitude. So to me, that's where the differentiator is. So Always Drip says Trey Lance seems to be clickbait for the media, seems to hate the guy. What did Trey Lance do to these reporters? Sheesh. It's just a hot topic to talk about Trey. Yeah, it really is. I mean, if I put Trey Lance on a thumbnail or Brock Purdy or Sam Darnold, Trey Lance is going to get the most clicks. It's just the way that it is. He's either an easy punching bag or he's a favorite of a lot of people. People root for him and almost look at him as an underdog. Somehow being a third pick overall has become an underdog, the way that people hate on him. And you saw that tweet from Quincy Avery. If you haven't, you can go check out a video that I put on my channel where he was in Twitter Spaces. But it all started from him asking, what the hell is everybody's deal? Why do you hate Trey Lance? He is one of the most genuine, real people you could ever meet. So how can you attack this guy personally? That's how it all started. And then it went into, hey, if you're worried about his mechanics, don't blame me, blame Kyle Shanahan. That's what it ended up being. But it all started from a tweet asking, what the hell is your issue? He's a really good person. So that's what you'll see. Cryptic says Hufanga started off strong, making an immediate impact, but towards the tail end, he fell off a little bit. Yeah. He bit on plays too hard and let wide receivers get over the top on occasion. How has he been in practice this season thus far? Well, first of all, he's the first one out there every day, per usual. If you were watching in the very beginning, I said that during one-on-ones, defensive players rarely win. Hufanga beat George Kittle in one-on-ones. Absolutely locked him up. So he's one of the few players that was able to win on defense in one-on-ones. My neighbor is weed whacking right now. So hopefully that doesn't ruin the stream, but he was able to win in one-on-ones. He had the near pick, should have been pick, drop pick yesterday, coming over and covering George Kittle. He looks really good. Hufanga's a player, man. Hufanga, I think maybe playing for a full season might have worn on him a little bit. I know it was his second season, but when you play sparingly and then you play for a full season, I really think that just getting through a season can be tough. We heard about that with Drake Jackson, where he hit the rookie wall essentially and really just couldn't push through and was almost non-existent down the stretch. I think that could have happened to Hufanga a little bit and knocked down his play. but I think the instincts are as good as ever. Hufanga is a baller. He might end up being the best safety in the league here in the next couple of years. He is really, really good. He's a hell of a player. So don't worry about Hufanga. I think he's going to be everything that you can expect. Always Drippin' asks, was D Winter showing up in training camp while you were watching? Yeah, I mean, we talked about the one pass that Trey Lance in the 5 days put in harm's way. It was a D Winter's interception. And it wasn't a good throw by any means, it was a good throw, but it was a bad decision. It was an awful decision. But D Winters had to climb the ladder and go get it. Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you get an interception in practice, I mean, you're flashing. So that was really all I saw of him. It's not like he did a ton, but that's good, right? So he flashed a little bit the way that you would want to. Absolutely. CJ Gray says the jump to conclusion about either quarterback is misguided at this point. I agree. I completely agree. We don't know fully who any of them are. I think that we have enough evidence to build an opinion, form an opinion, but that doesn't mean that opinion's right. So I respect everybody that has an opinion based off of what they know, but information changes very rapidly in the NFL. Information sure did change a lot on Geno Smith. I don't think anybody saw that coming. That was technically his third year of actually playing football, and I've talked about this a million times, but year 3 for quarterbacks, not year 3 in the league, but year 3 of playing is a crucial year. It's a make or break year. And that's when you really start to find out who players are. Guys like Justin Fields, we're going to find out, who is he really? Mac Jones, who is he really? Geno Smith didn't have that. He played the first 2 years, and then he rode the bench up until last year. And that was really his third year of playing football. And guess what? It looked pretty good. So I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. I don't think a lot of people expected that. We had an idea. We thought we knew who Geno Smith was, but we were wrong. So you never know fully what's going to happen. Things change very rapidly in this league. And it did for him. No doubt about it. Drippy Dad says, Jesse, can you name 2 players that won camp so far? One offense, one defense. Yeah, absolutely. The 2 players, well, okay. I guess that could be different than players to watch. The players that I gave to watch, one on offense was Leroy. Hold on a second. Sorry. Got a pop up here that it won't go away. Was Leroy Watson. And 2 players to watch on defense were Taco Charlton and Jalen Graham. As far as like an outright winner, like who flashed the most offensively and defensively, man, the receivers all flashed on a regular basis. I would say a guy that really struggled early, had a couple fumbles in practice, was Mason. But once they got to 11 on 11 with pads, he's been dang near flawless. He and Trey Lance definitely had some routes where they weren't on the same page, but overall, he's extremely explosive. Extremely explosive. They've got to figure out a way to get him some touches. And not only that, he's a surprisingly good route runner. He's got good hands, and he's a really good route runner. So I would say that for me, he was probably the biggest winner on offense. On defense, it's Taco Charlton. I mean, he's been obliterating people. And he was only there for a few days. He was just signed. But he's a first-round talent. And Chris Kosaric, I think, can work wonders with him. He's been phenomenal in those practices. So those are probably the 2 players that I would give you. Yeah, the mic might be messed up. I apologize. Sometimes when I switch, is it good now? Is it good? Sorry. Dang. All right. I know sometimes when I switch applications, it can do that. Hopefully, are we good now? Let me know. Now it's good. Okay. Sorry. When I switch applications, sometimes it does that. I apologize. But I was saying that Taco Charlton has won on defense, and on offense, it was Mason, 100% Mason. So those are the two that I would have winning camp. Sorry about that. Yeah, I agree. Darnold is who he is. I think that out of all of them, we have the biggest sample size from him. And when I talk about 3 years of playing a lot of football, he's had his 3 years. So I feel more comfortable saying we know who Sam Darnold is than I do for sure Brock Purdy or Trey Lance. So let's see. Yeah, a lot of you were talking about the mic. Sorry about that, y'all. We're good. Blame the aliens. Yeah, that's it. That's a good point. That 49ers After Dark at Grant's house was epic. Yeah, it was interesting, right? Because what happens is we're used to streaming just one person. And when you do that, you're constantly looking forward. You're looking at the camera. And when you get in person, you kind of want to pay attention to each other, but it took a while to get that chemistry down. We're not used to working in person with someone. And then we're not set up to podcast the way that we should. We have nice mics, we have nice equipment, but when you're using StreamYard, you really have to do a lot of back end stuff. You have to, when I'm talking, he has to mute and vice versa. And so the audio is really screwed up in the beginning. However, I think once the show got rolling and we figured it out, that was probably my favorite show I've ever done. I really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed that. So yeah, it was a bit awkward at first for sure. But that's what happens. Hold on a second. Yeah, Chris Conley and Tay Martin, they're looking really good too. And that's the hard part. Those are guys that they're probably going to try to sneak on the practice squad and may get picked up. Maybe they can sneak them on the practice squad. I don't know, but they've looked really, really good. Really good. Kinlaw. So Kinlaw's done really good in the one-on-one periods. He did have a sack, so he's definitely flashed. I do notice, and I would have to defer to Rohan here, but Rohan especially was watching the one-on-ones with offensive and defensive line while I was watching the one-on-ones with the receivers and running backs and DBs and what have you. He said that whenever he went up against a lineman who was a starter, he was stonewalled. He couldn't overcome starting offensive linemen, but whenever he went up against second team offensive linemen, he won with regularity. So I would say this, remember that Kinlaw has not had any offseason where he's been able to actually develop as a player. All of his development has been while he's trying to get healthy, playing actual football. That is not when you develop. So for him, I think this offseason is crucial. I think it's his only offseason he's really been able to truly develop. The fact that he's even out there every day and healthy and is winning regardless of who it's against, that's a positive sign. I think he will get better as the offseason goes. And I would expect that some of those one-on-ones start to be won by him when he's going against those ones. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with Kinlaw. I hear it all, man. I hear Fred Durst. I hear Tim Tebow. I don't know who I look like. I'm having an identity crisis. I don't know who I am anymore. I really don't. Big Des says Trey has said all the right things. He is respectful. The guy has changed his mechanics literally in an offseason and came back from serious injury of his own. Why the hate? Y'all know why. I don't know, man. I think this is the hardest part. It's funny because a lot of people call me a Brock Purdy hater, regardless of the evidence that I've put out there about how I've liked him for 2 years going into the draft process. I mean, think this through. As a content creator, wouldn't you want to prove that you're right more than anything? I think a lot of people would rather be right than anything else. You want to be right, especially when your takes are on full blast all the time. I can be held accountable for any take I've ever had, more so than any normal fan because they're constantly out there. Every little thought that I have about the 49ers, I put out into the ether, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on the community tab here, whether it's here on a live stream or somebody else's live stream. Every thought that I have is out there. So you can hold me accountable more so than you can most people. That being said, wouldn't you think I would want to be right? If I talked about Brock Purdy for 2 years going into the draft process and then he came into the league and played well, wouldn't you assume at that point that instead of quote unquote hating on him and talking about some of the limitations, that I would be like, haha, I knew it. I knew he would be a guy. I said he was a second or a third round prospect. I knew it 2 years ago. I'm right. And don't you think I would ride those coattails? I easily could have. That would have been very easy for me to do. I have all of the proof, the celebration when he was drafted, going into Twitter spaces and telling people that they got a steal, all the texts, all the tweets, every receipt you could think of. I could have easily jumped on that bandwagon, and I didn't. That's not hate. That's giving you my honest assessment in the moment of who I think he is, who I think he can be, and what I'm seeing. So somehow that's misconstrued as hate. That's okay. All right. However you want to see it, you can paint that picture. But I've never once attacked his character. I've never, even when I'm talking about him as a football player, I always say how I admire him as a Christian, as a man, as somebody who's matured, somebody that has a great mental makeup. All of those things. I've always said those things, even when I'm quote unquote hating. I have never attacked his character as a person. However, I will say when it comes to Trey Lance, somehow, some way, that's okay to do. That's been made acceptable. For whatever reason. You can come up with your narrative as to why. I'm not here to sell you on why that is. I don't mind if you think he's not going to be a good football player. I don't mind if you think that they wasted draft picks and that they spent too much on him. If we're talking football, talk football. But to attack him the way that people have, to make fun of an injury the way that people have, to make fun of his career the way that people have, it's actually disgusting. It's very disgusting to watch. And I see it in my chats. I have people pay super chats that I won't read because they're trying to use that and gain a platform to really attack his credibility, I believe, on a personal level. And I'm just not with the BS. Keep it to football. And that's what this channel has always been built about, is attack the argument, not the person. And that goes for everybody in the chat. Like that's the mantra of the channel. So when you're in the chat, and I know that I can't keep up on it, and sometimes the admins don't keep up on it or are not in the chat, but I've always said, don't go at each other on a personal level. This is football. This is supposed to be a getaway. It's supposed to be fun. Don't attack each other. Attack the argument. Don't attack the person. And I would say that as well for Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. Don't attack the people. You can attack them as football players. And when I say attack, I mean talk about them and how you see them. Everybody deserves their opinion. What's funny is everybody might end up being wrong in this situation. Brock Purdy might not end up being very good at all. Then all the Brock Purdy people who were already wrong about Jimmy G already, let's make that clear. They were wrong about Jimmy G. Now they're doubling down on Brock Purdy. They might be wrong about Brock Purdy. And Trey Lance also might not be very good. And then we're wrong about Trey Lance, and then everybody's wrong. Have an opinion, talk football, keep it to football. But when people attack him as a human being, I'm just not a fan of it, man. And it's clear. It happens an awful lot. So Cryptic says, what's the vibe for Bosa? Does he play week 1? I'd be shocked if he doesn't play week 1. Absolutely shocked if he doesn't play week 1. They definitely have to work some things out. It's going to be a tough pill for the 49ers to swallow because he's going to want a lot of guaranteed money that he deserves. And the Bosas get paid. That's what they do. So the 49ers are going to have to figure that out, but he'll be there week 1. If he's not, I would be absolutely shocked. Absolutely shocked. So I'm not worried about week 1 at all. Antonio Green says, First of all, he's yelling it. I don't know why you're yelling. He says, can we stop being fans of Trey or Brock? Can we be fans of the 49ers and go with who we go with? This is some Team Edward, Team Jacob type. Yeah, here's what I'll say, Antonio. I actually think it's healthy, and I really think that people should pick sides to a certain extent. People should pick a quarterback, have an opinion. Who do you think is going to be better? I think it's fun. I think it's good to have those debates. And the 49ers have put us in a situation where you should choose a guy. But that doesn't mean that you hate the other one. It doesn't mean that you get personal with the other one. And that also doesn't mean that you don't root for the other one when they are on the field and the games are played. And people that have heard this from me are tired of hearing it, but I say it every time these conversations come up. Your only job as a fan is to root for the product on the field when they are playing football. So whether that's Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, Nick Mullins, Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, it doesn't matter. You're rooting for the product when it's on the field. Before that game is played, after that game is played, you can have whatever opinion you want. But while that game is being played, your obligation as a fan is to root for that player and that product. That's it. That's your only obligation. So we should all unite when those games are being played. But I think we should also have a preference and have an opinion. I think having an opinion is always a good thing. So that's just the way that I see it. I think sports debate is fun. I think going out on a limb and having conversations are fun. I think that's what sports are all about, is picking players, talking about players, trying to predict players' futures. I don't know. I just think that's where sports are at. That's where we should be. That's the fun part. So I see you 49ers minded. I see you 209er. Stursky, what's up, man? Stursky says Brock consistently underthrowing deep balls in practice and people acting like it's not concerning. Again, it's all in how you see things. I don't think it's because of an arm injury. I think this is who Brock Purdy is. But this Brock Purdy was able to win a lot of games. And this Brock Purdy with this roster might be able to win a Super Bowl. We'll see. This year, time will tell. And if they're going to forego Trey Lance in that development, they better win a Super Bowl. They didn't win a Super Bowl in year one with Jimmy Garoppolo, and people said that they made the right decision not playing Trey Lance. I disagree wholeheartedly. Getting to the NFC Championship was not the goal. They drafted Trey Lance to eventually win a Super Bowl. They didn't think Jimmy Garoppolo was that guy. So not winning a Super Bowl was not worth foregoing Trey Lance's development. And here we are again. If Brock Purdy, for whatever reason, proves not to be the long-term answer, a guy that you can pay big money, and they don't win a Super Bowl, it's a big waste. The pressure's on. I know Brock Purdy's going into year 2, and I would love to give him grace as being a second-year quarterback. I think he deserves that. But when we're talking about timelines of the 49ers, people are unwilling to be patient with Trey Lance and his development. So we have to be unwilling to be patient with Brock Purdy. It's Super Bowl or bust. And if they don't win, it's likely going to be pinned on the quarterback, fair or not. That is the reality of the situation. The thought process has always been that if they had a quarterback who was slightly better than Jimmy Garoppolo, they could have won a Super Bowl. Well, I think we all agree that Brock Purdy's slightly better, or at least played slightly better than Jimmy Garoppolo. So if that is who he is, and we expect him to improve going into season 2, then he better win a Super Bowl. And if he doesn't, and he doesn't prove to be the guy long-term, I mean, we really should be blaming Kyle Shanahan. Brock Purdy, that's not on Brock Purdy. That is not on Brock Purdy. All he can do is go out and play good football, and that's what he's done thus far. So he earned the job from that retrospect, or from that perspective. But we really should be blaming Kyle Shanahan if they don't win a Super Bowl again. It should not be on Brock Purdy. But you know he'll be the scapegoat. I'm not going to blame Debo or Trent or Bosa or Kittle. None of those. Fred Warner. You think those guys are getting blamed? Kyle Shanahan has the longest leash of all time. People love Kyle Shanahan. He's not going to get blamed either. It's all going to be on Brock Purdy, fair or not. So Brock Purdy's got to win a Super Bowl. And I talked about his mental fortitude. I think that mentally he's strong enough to be that guy. I don't know if physically he is. We'll see. Time will tell. All right, y'all, listen. This has been a crazy week. Put in a ton of work. I hope you've really enjoyed it. I really, truly do. I've enjoyed the hell out of covering it. Had a lot of fun. And I hope that I've brought something different to the table than everybody else. For me, this week was really a learning week. Going into it, I had a lot of expectations. I thought that I had things figured out. I hang on every tweet from these reporters. I thought that I still think they paint a pretty good picture overall, especially when you go watch all of them, you can kind of come up with your own conclusion. That's really what I was trying to do. Yes, I give my opinion, I give my grades, but I'm trying to paint the picture for you and allow you to come up with your own opinions, along with watching everybody else form your own opinions. But I think there was a lot of context that has never been given to y'all that needed to be out there. And I hope I did a good job of that. Talked about players rotating in and out on a regular basis. When you hear somebody's playing with the first or second team, you assume it's just first team versus first team, second team versus second team. That's not always the case. Talked about that context. Talked about the context of dead plays and how a lot of people will count those. So if, let's say, Brock Purdy one day got sacked 4 times, but on those sacks, he went 4 of 4. People will include those in their completions for the day and paint a completely different picture than the way that it actually probably went down. And that's not just Brock Purdy. I just use him as an example. That's really for all the quarterbacks. And I think that was where I was able to kind of separate my coverage from other people, is trying to give that context. Because for me, these are things that I always wanted to see and know. And when I got there, it was different and played out different than what I expected. And so I hope that I did a good job of relaying that message to you. And now you have a better understanding of what it's really like to be out there and what is actually happening in these. Steve says, awesome job, bro. You are a real one. Keep it up. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate you. Like I said, I'm not trying to take a shot at anybody else. Everybody works their butt off. Even people that I don't agree with, you should watch their content. Everybody's content deserves to be consumed that is in this, that is going out to practice to try to provide information to you, because that's really all we're trying to do, is provide you information. Whether you agree with someone, you disagree with someone, take in everybody's information and come up with your own opinion. But for me, there's important context that needed to be laid out. And like I said, I hope I did a good job of painting that picture for y'all. All right, guys. Well, there's one more practice today. Then there's one on Monday, and that's it. It's no longer open to fans. We're going to have to rely on people that are with the team as far as being on the inside and being journalists. Hopefully they can do a good job and continue to do a good job of painting the picture of what is going to happen throughout the rest of these practices. And I've really enjoyed it. Appreciate all of you showing love. Have a blessed weekend. Peace.